During an international flight, a billionaire finds himself helpless in the face of his baby's non-stop crying, as tension rises around him. Just when all seems lost, a simple girl from the economy class offers to help, using her experience with babies to soothe the child. Chapter 1. The Encounter in the Heights. The private Gulfstream G650 cut through the clouds in the skies over Washington state, bound for New York City. Alexander Sterling adjusted his Italian silk tie and checked the email he had just received on his smartphone one more time. The merger was practically complete. Another $500 million for his fortune, already estimated at $11 billion. Everything would have been perfect if not for the incessant crying of his 5-month-old son, Benjamin. William tried to do something. He ordered his personal assistant, who was trying unsuccessfully, to calm the baby. "I've already tried the bottle, sir. I changed his diaper. I even put on that classical music you always use to soothe him. So I think it might be colic." Alexander rubbed his tired eyes. The deep dark circles betrayed the sleepless nights since Benjamin was born, and especially since Eliza, his wife, had abandoned him 3 weeks after giving birth, claiming she wasn't cut out for motherhood. He cared little about his wife's departure. Marriages came and went in his life, but taking on the sole responsibility of raising his son was a challenge for which no international MBA had prepared him. "We're going to need to make an emergency stop in Chicago. I can't take this crying anymore," Alexander decided, as the baby's wails grew even louder. At that moment, the pilot communicated over the intercom, "Mr. Sterling, we're encountering an unexpected cold front. For safety reasons, I will be making an alternate landing at the Charleston International Airport in South Carolina. Estimated time of arrival is 30 minutes. Alexander let a curse slip out. The tight schedule for signing the merger documents allowed for no delays. He would have to join the meeting remotely, right from the airport. Little Benjamin, as if sensing his father's nervousness, intensified his crying even more. The landing in Charleston was tense. Heavy rain battered the aircraft's fuselage, and the wind made stabilization difficult. When they finally touched down, Alexander faced an even more complicated situation. All private flights were grounded due to the weather conditions. "Mr. Sterling, I managed to book business class tickets on the next commercial flight to New York, which departs in 3 hours, William reported, trying to maintain his composure while Benjamin continued to cry in his arms. "A commercial flight?" Alexander nearly shouted. He had never been on a commercial airliner in his entire adult life. "Are you crazy? With this baby in this state? It's the only option, sir. Your commitment is non-negotiable." Reluctantly, Alexander agreed. In the airport terminal, he tried to use his name and influence to secure an isolated VIP lounge, but even those spaces were crowded due to the numerous cancelled flights. For the first time in many years, he was at the mercy of the same reality as most people. Boarding the commercial flight was a nightmare. Disapproving glares followed Alexander and the baby, who wouldn't stop crying. Even in business class, the other passengers began to complain. Benjamin, having been crying non-stop for almost 5 hours, seemed to be in pain. The flight attendant, visibly annoyed, approached. "Sir, the other passengers are complaining. Is there anything we can do to calm the baby?" Alexander felt his face burn with shame and anger. He was used to solving any problem with money or power, but there, in that moment, he was just a desperate father with a suffering child. "If I knew what to do, I would have already done it," he answered curtly. "Perhaps you could try walking him up and down the aisles," the flight attendant suggested, trying to be helpful. Alexander stood up with Benjamin in his arms. The baby, red and breathless from crying so much, clung to his father's shirt, soaking it with tears and saliva. Walking down the aircraft's aisle, Alexander felt increasingly helpless. Through the window, he saw the storm that still battered the Carolina coast, extending the flight time. As he passed the last few rows where the economy class began, a firm yet gentle female voice caught his attention. "Sir, would you allow me to help with the baby?" Alexander turned, surprised. A young girl of about 14, dressed simply, faded jeans and a T-shirt from the South Carolina Governor's School for Science and Mathematics, was extending her arms toward Benjamin. Her curly hair was pulled back in a makeshift ponytail, and her dark brown eyes conveyed a disconcerting confidence. "Who are you?" Alexander asked, suspicious. "My name is Amara Jones. I have experience with babies. I think your son has colic, and I know how to relieve it. Hesitant but with no other options, Alexander handed his son over to the teenager, who immediately positioned him face down on her lap. With precise and gentle movements, she began to make circular massages on Benjamin's back, applying light pressure to specific points. I learned these techniques taking care of my younger sister, Amara explained as she worked. My mom had postpartum depression when Jenna was born, and I ended up taking care of her. I researched a lot about infant colic. To Alexander's astonishment, Benjamin's crying began to gradually subside. In less than 10 minutes, the baby let out a small burp and relaxed completely in Amara's arms, then fell asleep. How did you do that? Alexander murmured, perplexed. It's an adapted Shantala massage technique. I combined it with some traditional medicine movements I learned from a library book. The problem is, the colic might come back in a few hours. I can teach you how to do it. Alexander looked at the teenager with a mixture of gratitude and curiosity. There was something about her that was intriguing, a maturity and knowledge that didn't match her apparent social standing. Why are you traveling alone? He asked as they walked back to business class, now with Benjamin asleep in Amara's arms. I'm going to New York to represent South Carolina in the USA Mathematical Olympiad. I got a state government grant for the trip. The Mathematical Olympiad. Alexander raised his eyebrows, even more intrigued. Yes, I placed first in the state qualifiers, she replied naturally, without a trace of vanity. Sitting next to Alexander in business class, to the horror of the flight attendant who didn't know how to react to this breach of rules, Amara continued to hold Benjamin, who was now sleeping soundly. And your parents? Are they waiting for you in New York? No, sir. My mom is taking care of my sister in Charleston. I'll be staying in the student housing provided by the Olympiad organization. I only have the grant money, which barely covers basic meals. Alexander observed the young woman with growing fascination. There was something in the girl's determination, in the way she faced adversity, that impressed him deeply. How long have you been interested in math? Amara's eyes lit up. Forever, I guess. I started solving differential equations when I was 9. I taught myself using books from the public library and free videos on the internet. At the community center's computer lab. I also like programming. I develop algorithms for fun. I made a program that optimizes the routes for the recyclers in my community, in Northbridge Heights, to save them time and fuel. Alexander almost choked. Differential equations at 9? Are you kidding me? No, sir. Amara smiled shyly and, balancing Benjamin on one arm, pulled a worn-out spiral notebook from her battered backpack. I can show you some of my recent projects if you'd like. Flipping through the notebook, Alexander came across notes on complex algorithms, advanced mathematical models, and programming code that challenged his own understanding, even though he had graduated with an engineering degree before getting his MBA. The flight attendant approached, now with a friendlier expression. We're almost arriving in New York, sir. We need everyone to return to their original seats for landing. Alexander, struck by a sudden inspiration, asked, Amara, how long will you be in New York? 1 week, sir. The exams are on Tuesday and Thursday. And on the other days, I'm going to take the opportunity to visit some free museums. I've never been to New York before. Alexander quickly checked the schedule on his smartphone. The merger would require his full attention for the next 3 days, and William would be busy with corporate logistics. Who would take care of Benjamin? It was then that he had an idea that would forever change the course of several lives. Amara, I have a proposal for you. He took a deep breath, knowing that what he was about to say was completely out of character for him. I need help with Benjamin during my work commitments. Would you be willing to stay at the same hotel as me, in a separate room, of course, and take care of him when I'm in meetings? In return, I would offer luxury accommodations, meals, and you could explore New York in your free time, with a driver at your disposal. I would also help with any needs for your Olympiad. Amara blinked a few times, processing the unexpected proposal. Then she looked down at the sleeping baby in her arms. You would trust your son with a stranger? Alexander smiled, surprising himself with his own answer. You're not a stranger. You're the person who did what no one else could today. Besides, I can check your references if you'd like. The young woman thought for a few moments, assessing the situation with a maturity that was surprising for her age. I accept. Mr. Sterling, on one condition, that you allow me to use the hotel's Wi-Fi to study online. I need to prepare for my exams. Alexander extended his hand, sealing the deal that would mark the beginning of an extraordinary journey. Done. What neither of them could have imagined at that moment, as the plane began its descent into JFK Airport, was how that chance encounter in the Heights would profoundly transform their destinies. Chapter 2. A New World. The luxurious Mandarin Oriental Hotel, overlooking Columbus Circle, felt like a parallel universe to Amara. As the bellhop opened the door to the presidential suite adjacent to Alexander Sterling's, she remained motionless at the entrance, absorbing every detail of the environment. The room was larger than her entire house in Northbridge Heights. The king-sized bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, the marble bathroom with a jacuzzi tub, the panoramic view of New York City through the floor-to-ceiling windows, it all seemed like something out of a movie. "Is everything all right, Amara?" Alexander asked, holding Benjamin, who was still asleep. "Yes, Mr. Sterling, it's just, I've never seen a room like this," she answered honestly, as she placed her small, battered backpack on the leather sofa. Alexander felt a strange pang as he realized the impact that his everyday luxury had on the teenager. For the first time in a long time, he saw his own world through someone else's eyes. "Please, just call me Alexander." He handed her a key card. "This card covers all expenses at the hotel. Meals, room service, laundry, whatever you need. William, my assistant, will bring some more things for you shortly. Now I need to show you how to take care of Benjamin." Over the next 2 hours, Alexander transferred basic information about his son's schedules and preferences to Amara. She listened attentively, taking precise notes in her notebook, the same one where she recorded her mathematical formulas. To Alexander's surprise, she asked extremely insightful questions about the baby's neuromotor development, his temperature and light preferences, and even about possible allergies. "Where did you learn all this?" Alexander asked, impressed. "Public internet and child development books from the library," she replied simply. "When my sister was born, I wanted to understand what was happening with her and how to help her. I ended up studying a lot about babies." When William arrived, bringing new clothes, toiletries, and a laptop for Amara, Alexander was already preparing for his first virtual meeting with the merger investors. "You think you'll be okay with him?" he asked, adjusting his tie in front of the mirror. "Yes, I have experience. Don't worry." Amara took Benjamin in her arms with natural ease. "Go take care of your business. We'll be fine." The virtual meeting dragged on for 4 hours. When it finally ended, Alexander returned to the presidential suite exhausted, expecting to find Amara tired and Benjamin crying. To his surprise, the scene he found was completely different. Amara was sitting in the armchair near the window, her laptop open on a side table, solving what appeared to be complex equations, while softly humming a lullaby. Benjamin was playing peacefully on the rug, surrounded by makeshift toys she had created from objects in the room. "How was the meeting?" she asked without taking her eyes off the screen. "Productive." Alexander approached, intrigued by what he saw on the laptop screen. "What are you working on there?" "Oh, I'm trying to solve a nonlinear optimization problem for the Olympiad," she smiled. "I'm also developing an algorithm that could help predict crying patterns in babies based on variables like feeding, sleep, and environmental stimuli." I started thinking about it while taking care of Benjamin. Alexander sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, observing the unusual teenager. There was something extraordinary about her that went far beyond her skill with math or programming. "Have you ever thought about studying at a better school?" "With your talent?" "Of course I have." Amara closed the laptop. "But my reality is different, Sir Alexander. I go to a public school. I attend classes when I can between taking care of Jenna and helping my mom. I learn a lot more on my own than in the classroom." "And your father?" Amara's expression darkened slightly. "He left us when he found out my mom was pregnant with Jenna, said he couldn't afford to feed another mouth." She took a deep breath, regaining her composure. "But we're okay. My mom works as a housekeeper in people's homes. I help out by selling sweets I make on weekends. Between that and a few smaller scholarships I win at competitions, we manage to get by." At that moment, Benjamin started to whimper. With impressive skill, Amara immediately identified the cause. "He's hungry. I prepared the bottle 10 minutes ago, anticipating his usual time. It's at the perfect temperature now. She stood up, picked up the bottle she had left resting in a bowl of warm water, and handed it to Alexander. Do you want to feed him? Alexander took his son in his arms and offered the bottle, watching as he eagerly drank the milk. A strange sense of peace enveloped him, something he rarely experienced in his frantic life of business and acquisitions. You're really incredible. Amara. She blushed slightly. I'm just observant. Benjamin has pretty predictable patterns when you pay attention. After the baby fell asleep again, Alexander insisted that Amara join him for dinner at the hotel restaurant. I don't have appropriate clothes for a place like that, she argued, pointing to her faded jeans and the governor's school t-shirt. William arranged for some things for you. They're in the closet. In the room's walk-in closet, Amara found designer clothes still with tags on in sizes that fit her perfectly. There were dresses, pants, blouses, and even shoes. Everything clearly cost more than she could ever afford in several months of work. I can't accept this, she murmured, returning to the living area. Alexander, who was playing with Benjamin on the rug, looked up at her with a confused expression. Why not? It's too much. You barely know me. I came to take care of Benjamin, not to receive expensive gifts. Alexander was momentarily speechless. In his world, money was simply a tool, something to be used to get what he wanted. The idea of someone refusing something on principle was almost incomprehensible to him. They're not gifts, Amara. They're tools, he argued. You need appropriate clothes to move around this hotel without drawing unwanted attention. Consider it a work uniform if you prefer. Amara reflected for a few moments. All right, I'll accept the clothes as part of our professional agreement. But only what's necessary. Dinner at the restaurant was a revealing experience for both of them. While Amara tasted haute cuisine dishes for the first time, holding the silverware with a studied care, clearly learned from some online tutorial, Alexander questioned her about her knowledge and aspirations. You mentioned optimization algorithms. What kind of practical applications do you see for them? The teenager's eyes shone with genuine enthusiasm. Endless ones. I'm developing a system that optimizes school bus routes to reduce fuel consumption and students' travel time. I applied a beta version to the route that passes through my neighborhood, just as a simulation. The results show we could reduce fuel consumption by 23% and the average travel time by 18%. You did this on your own, without guidance? Yes, I use the school's computer lab after classes when it's empty. The math teacher gave me special permission. She hesitated. I also have a project to optimize the distribution of food pantry boxes in my community, ensuring they reach the neediest families first, based on objective criteria like the number of children, presence of elderly, health condition. Alexander listened fascinated. This teenager, without resources and practically self-taught, was developing solutions that many tech companies with millions in investment had not yet implemented efficiently. Why do you care so much about these social issues? He asked, genuinely curious. Amara stopped eating and looked at him with an intensity that made him feel almost uncomfortable. Because I live these issues every day, Alexander. It's not theory for me. It's the reality for my family, my neighbors, my friends. She took a deep breath. When you see a child going to school without breakfast, or an elderly person who can't get their medication because the health clinic is out of stock, you want to do something about it. And since I don't have money or power, I use what I have, my mind. A reflective silence hung over the table. Alexander realized he was in the presence of someone who saw the world in a fundamentally different way than he did. And what would you do if you had resources? He finally asked. I'd create scalable solutions, Amara answered promptly. Technologies that could be implemented on a large scale to solve basic efficiency problems in resource distribution. I'd develop accessible educational apps for children without opportunities like I had. I'd fund research in sustainable energy for low-income communities. Alexander watched the young woman's expressive face intently as she spoke. There was a purity and conviction in her words that contrasted with the cynicism and power plays he was accustomed to in the corporate world. After dinner, they returned to their rooms to check on Benjamin, who was sleeping under the care of a professional nanny hired by the hotel. Before saying goodnight, Amara asked, "What time should I be ready tomorrow?" I have meetings starting at 8 a.m., but don't worry about a rigid schedule. Get some rest. Benjamin usually wakes up around 6:30. I'll be ready at 6 then, she smiled. Good night, Alexander. Good night, Amara. Alone in his suite, Alexander stayed awake, reflecting on the extraordinary day he'd had. As a businessman, he was used to identifying talent and opportunities. He knew potential when he saw it. And what he saw in Amara was something he had rarely encountered in his life, a diamond in the rough of incalculable value. In the room next door, Amara couldn't sleep either. Lying in the immense bed, she watched the lights of New York City through the panoramic window. Her thoughts alternated between the equations for the math Olympiad, caring for Benjamin, and the intriguing figure of Alexander Sterling, a man who seemed to have everything money could buy, yet displayed an almost palpable loneliness. Picking up her old phone with its cracked screen, she called home. Mom? It's me, Amara. Honey, how's New York? Are you okay? Is the housing comfortable? Sharon's voice sounded tired but affectionate. Amara hesitated. How could she explain what was happening? I'm fine, Mom. There was a change of plans. I'm helping take care of the baby of a businessman I met on the plane. He's putting me up in a hotel. What? Amara, that doesn't sound safe. The concern was evident in Sharon's voice. It's not like that, Mom. It's all professional. He's Alexander Sterling, owner of the Sterling Tech Group. You can look him up. He's a well-known person. Still, honey, trust me, Mom, I'm fine, and this will help me have better conditions for the Olympiad. She paused. How's Jenna? And she misses you. Asked about you all day. Tell her I'll be back soon, and that I'm seeing incredible things to tell her about. After hanging up, Amara looked back at the city lights. Something told her that her life was about to change in an irreversible way. What she couldn't imagine was how much that change would affect not only her own destiny, but also that of Alexander and Benjamin Sterling. Chapter 3. Two Worlds Intersect. The next 3 days passed in a surprisingly harmonious routine. While Alexander immersed himself in endless meetings to finalize the billion-dollar merger, Amara cared for Benjamin with a competence that impressed even the hotel maids, many of them experienced mothers themselves. In her few spare hours, the young woman used the borrowed laptop to study for the Math Olympiad, developing solutions to complex problems that challenged even university professors. When Alexander returned to the hotel, exhausted from corporate battles, he would find a happy baby and a teenager with surprising stories to tell, like the organizational system she had created for Benjamin's clothes and toys, based on a classification algorithm she had developed herself. On the morning of the 4th day, Alexander woke up earlier than usual. The merger was finalized, another $500 million added to his fortune. He should have been celebrating, perhaps with champagne and a call to one of his occasional companions. Instead, he found himself gently knocking on the door of Amara's room. Good morning. She opened the door, already fully dressed and alert, as if she had been awake for hours. Benjamin is still asleep. I managed to adjust his sleep cycle to longer periods during the night. Alexander smiled. Actually, I didn't come to talk about Benjamin. Today is the day of your first exam at the Olympiad, isn't it? Amara nodded, surprised that he remembered. Yes. It starts at 9 a.m. on the Columbia University campus. I was thinking. Alexander hesitated. A rare occurrence for a man accustomed to quick and decisive actions. I'd like to accompany you. If you don't mind, of course. Amara's eyes widened slightly. What about your commitments? The merger is done. I have the day off. He shrugged, trying to seem casual. I've never seen a high-level math competition. I'm curious. The truth, which he himself was reluctant to admit, was that this young woman had sparked a genuine interest in him that went beyond her exceptional talent. There was something in the way she faced life, with determination and optimism despite adverse circumstances, that intrigued him deeply. All right, she smiled. But I should warn you, it's not exactly a spectator sport. I'll be in a room for 4 hours solving problems on paper. I'll wait. Alexander checked his watch. I'll have them prepare breakfast. You need to be well fed for the competition. During breakfast, served on the suite's balcony with a view of Central Park, Alexander observed how Amara ate methodically while reviewing formulas in her notebook. Nervous? A little, she admitted. Not about the problems themselves, but because I know how much this could mean for my future. A gold medal in the National Olympiad opens doors to international competitions, scholarships, opportunities. Do you already know what you want to study in college? I want to do a double major in applied mathematics and computer science, she answered promptly, preferably at MIT or Columbia. Then I plan to get my master's and doctorate in artificial intelligence. Ambitious, Alexander commented. Impressed. Realistic, she corrected. I know what I'm capable of. I just need the opportunity. 3 hours later, Alexander was sitting on a bench on the grounds of Columbia University, answering emails on his tablet while he waited. Benjamin slept peacefully in the stroller beside him, under the watchful eye of William, who kept a respectful distance. The scene was unusual. One of the richest men in America, accustomed to the luxury of his office overlooking Wall Street, patiently waiting for a teenager he had met by chance less than a week ago. His cell phone rang. It was Helen Vance, his company's vice president and one of the few people who had his personal number. Alexander? Where are you? We have the merger celebration meeting with the shareholders in 2 hours. I won't be able to make it, Helen. I'm dealing with a personal matter. Personal? The surprise was evident in her voice. Alexander Sterling missing a shareholder meeting for a personal matter. What's going on? Just tell them I had an unavoidable commitment related to Benjamin. He ended the call without further explanation. Helen, on the other end of the line, stared at the phone, perplexed. In 15 years of working with Alexander, she had never seen him put anything, much less family matters, above business. At 1:45 p.m., Amara emerged from the mathematics building. Her usually serene face was lit up by a broad smile. Upon seeing Alexander, she ran to him. "I did it," she exclaimed, almost out of breath. "The problems were challenging, but I think I solved all of them correctly, especially the last one, about transcendental number theory, which was worth the most points." Alexander felt an unexpected wave of pride. "Congratulations! This calls for a celebration." "Thank you, but we still have the second exam on Thursday. I can't relax now." "A small celebration, then. How about we see some of the city's sights? You mentioned you've never been to New York before." Amara's eyes shone with anticipation. "Could we go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art?" "I've always wanted to see the American wing." Alexander smiled, surprised by the request. Most teenagers he knew would ask to go to a luxury shopping mall or a trendy restaurant. "Of course. And afterward we can visit the Museum of Modern Art if you like." The afternoon that followed was etched in both their memories. Strolling through the halls of the Met, Alexander watched as Amara absorbed every detail of the exhibitions, asking insightful questions of the guides, making connections between historical events that not even he, with his elite education, had noticed. At MoMA, she was particularly fascinated by the works of Georgia O'Keeffe and Edward Hopper. "Look at how Hopper used geometry in his compositions," she commented, analyzing the painting Nighthawks. "There's an underlying mathematical structure to the apparent disorder of the loneliness depicted." Alexander observed her with growing admiration. This young woman saw the world through a completely different lens than his, where he saw transactions and business opportunities. She identified patterns, connections, and possibilities for social improvement. When they returned to the hotel in the late afternoon, they encountered an unpleasant surprise. In the lobby, an elegantly dressed woman was arguing heatedly with the receptionist. "I'm Eliza Montgomery Sterling, Alexander Sterling's wife. I demand to know which suite he's staying in." Alexander froze, instinctively placing himself in front of the stroller where Benjamin slept. "Eliza." His voice was icy. "What are you doing here?" The woman turned. Tall, blonde, with fine features and flawless makeup, she looked like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. "Alexander, darling?" Her tone changed instantly to something syrupy and artificial. "I came to see my son, of course." "Your son?" Alexander raised an eyebrow. "The same son you abandoned 5 months ago, saying you weren't cut out for motherhood." Eliza made a dismissive gesture with her hand. "The past is the past, darling. I had my reasons. Postpartum depression, you know. But I'm better now." Her eyes landed on Amara, who stood discreetly beside Alexander. "And who is this girl?" There was something in the tone with which Eliza pronounced girl that made Alexander's blood boil. "This is Amara Jones, an extremely talented young mathematician who is taking care of Benjamin while I'm in New York. Amara, this is Eliza, Benjamin's biological mother. Amara politely extended her hand. It's a pleasure to meet you. Ma'am? Eliza completely ignored the gesture, focusing back on Alexander. Can we talk in private? Family matters. Alexander hesitated, looking at Amara and Benjamin. Amara, could you take Benjamin up to the suite, please? I need to have a conversation with Mrs. Montgomery. Of course. Amara took the stroller and moved away, not without casting a worried glance back at Alexander. As soon as they were alone, Eliza's demeanor changed completely. So this is how you take care of our son? Handing him over to some random girl? Don't talk about what you don't know, Eliza. Amara has done more for Benjamin in 4 days than you have in his entire life. That's irrelevant, she gestured impatiently. I came because we need to discuss Benjamin's legal situation. I spoke with my lawyer and he assured me I have rights as a mother. Alexander felt a tightness in his chest. He knew his ex-wife all too well not to see where this conversation was going. What rights exactly? Joint custody, for starters. She smiled, a calculated smile that didn't reach her eyes. And naturally a review of the child support. The amount your lawyer initially proposed is insulting considering your net worth. Let me get this straight. Alexander's voice was dangerously controlled. You abandoned our newborn son, didn't make contact for 5 months, and now you show up out of nowhere demanding joint custody and more money. It's my legal right, Alexander, she shrugged. And you know how the American justice system favors mothers in these cases. Alexander took a deep breath, trying to contain his anger. What do you really want, Eliza? She moved closer, adjusting the lapel of his suit in a falsely intimate gesture. 10 million. Transferred to my account in the Cayman Islands. In exchange, I formally renounce any and all rights to Benjamin. You get sole custody, no interference. You're selling your own son. It wasn't a question, but a statement. I'm being practical. We both know I don't have a maternal instinct. Benjamin will be better off with you and your nannies. She glanced in the direction Amara had gone with disdain. And I'll be better off with enough money to rebuild my life. Alexander kept his face impassive, hiding the turmoil of emotions consuming him. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow. Eliza adjusted the designer bag on her shoulder. Otherwise, my lawyers will file for joint custody, and this will become a very unpleasant public spectacle. Imagine the headlines: Billionaire Alexander Sterling in custody battle with ex-model for son. With those words, she turned and walked out of the lobby, leaving a deeply disturbed Alexander behind. Upon returning to the suite, he found Amara sitting in the armchair, with Benjamin on her lap. She was quietly reading a book on algorithms, while the baby played with a small colored ball. Is everything okay? She asked, immediately noticing his tense expression. Alexander considered lying, saying everything was under control, as he did with everyone in his life. But something in the sincerity of those brown eyes made him opt for the truth. No, Eliza is trying to extort me. She wants money to officially give up custody of Benjamin. Amara was silent for a few moments, processing the information. What are you going to do? Pay her, he replied without hesitation. 10 million is a small price for Benjamin's peace of mind. I don't want my son to grow up in the middle of a legal battle. I understand, she nodded, surprising him with her maturity. But wouldn't it be better to consult a lawyer first? Someone who can ensure that this agreement is truly final? Alexander looked at her astonished. It was exactly what he would have advised any friend in a similar situation, but in his own emotional turmoil, he hadn't considered it. You're right. I'll call my lawyer right now. As he dialed the number, he watched Amara calmly return to her reading, speaking to Benjamin in soft tones, as if the storm that had just erupted in their lives was just a brief summer shower. There was a strength in that young woman that he, with all his billions and influence, secretly envied. 2 hours and several calls later, Alexander finally hung up the phone. His lawyer had been clear. Paying Eliza was the quickest solution, but they needed solid legal guarantees to prevent future extortion. It's settled, he announced to Amara, who was now giving Benjamin his bottle. We'll make the deal, but with strict clauses drafted by my lawyer. Eliza will have to sign a definitive waiver of any rights to Benjamin, with severe penalties for any future attempts at contact or new financial demands. Amara nodded, approving the strategy. It's what's best for Benjamin, He deserves stability. Alexander sat down beside her, watching his son. For a moment, he imagined what little Benjamin's life would be like if, instead of Eliza, he had chosen a woman with Amara's character and intelligence to be his mother. "Thank you," he said finally. "For what?" "For being here. For taking such good care of him, for advising me." Amara smiled, a simple and genuine smile that contrasted with the calculated smiles of Eliza and so many other people who circulated in his business world. "You don't have to thank me. Benjamin is a wonderful baby. And you—" she hesitated briefly. "You've been very generous with me." A comfortable silence settled between them. Outside, the lights of New York City began to sparkle in the falling night. Inside that hotel suite, something new and indefinable was being born. A connection that transcended the social age and experiential differences that separated the billionaire and the young prodigy. Chapter 3: 4 Decisions that Transform. The second exam of the USA Mathematical Olympiad went exactly as Amara had predicted. Challenging but perfectly manageable for someone with her level of preparation. As she left the exam room, she found Alexander and Benjamin waiting on the Columbia campus, a scene that still felt surreal to her. "How did it go?" Alexander asked, genuinely interested. "Better than the first one," she smiled, confident. "Especially the question on graph theory applied to complex networks. I think I have a good shot at the gold." Alexander nodded, as proud as if Benjamin had taken his first steps. "When do the results come out?" "Tomorrow night during the closing ceremony." An uncomfortable silence hung between them. The week was coming to an end, and with it the unspoken agreement that kept them together. Amara was supposed to return to Charleston, to her life of financial hardship and premature family responsibilities. Alexander would return to Seattle, to his billion-dollar businesses and the empty mansion where only he and his son would reside, surrounded by efficient but emotionally distant staff. "We need to talk," Alexander said finally, as they walked through the university gardens. About the future, Amara felt a tightness in her chest. During this extraordinary week, she had tried not to get attached to the temporary life of comfort and opportunity she was experiencing. But it was impossible to deny that these days had changed her perspective forever. "Yes, of course. My flight back is scheduled for Saturday morning." Alexander stopped walking and turned to face her directly. "What if you didn't go back?" "What do you mean?" Amara frowned, confused. "I have a proposal for you, Amara." Alexander took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "I would like to fully fund your education. A top private school, with an advanced program in mathematics and computer science. Your own apartment in New York for you and your family. Everything you need to develop your extraordinary potential." Amara stood motionless, trying to process what she had just heard. "Why?" she finally managed to ask. "Why would you do this for me?" Alexander smiled, a different kind of smile than usual. Not the confident smile of the successful businessman, but something more genuine and vulnerable. "Because your talent is too exceptional to be wasted. Because you deserve the best opportunities. And because—" he hesitated briefly. "Because in the last few days, I've realized there's much more to life than accumulating money and closing deals." Amara looked down, processing the proposal that could completely transform her reality. "I can't accept," she replied finally, to Alexander's surprise. "Why not?" "It's too generous, and I don't want to be a charity project." Alexander shook his head, frustrated. "It's not charity, Amara, it's an investment. In your future, in your potential. If you prefer, we can structure it as a loan that you'll pay back once you're professionally established." "Even so," she hesitated. "What about my mom, my sister? Our life is in Charleston." "They would come with you, of course. Part of the deal includes a suitable apartment for the three of you, and a better job for your mother if she wishes. Jenna would have access to an excellent preschool." Amara's eyes filled with unshed tears. The proposal was everything she had ever dreamed of. Opportunity, stability, a future where her talent could flourish without the constant financial worries that haunted her. "I need to think. And talk to my mom." "Naturally," Alexander nodded. "Take all the time you need." That night in her hotel room, Amara made a video call to Sharon. With a voice trembling with emotion, she explained the extraordinary proposal she had received. Her mother's reaction was one of caution. "Honey, this sounds too good to be true." What interest would this rich man have in helping a simple family like ours? He says it's because of my potential, Mom, and I think he really cares. Sharon sighed, worried. Amara, you're only 14. You're too young to understand how the world works. Rich people don't do anything without expecting something in return. Alexander isn't like that, Mom. He's been genuinely kind, without asking for anything in return. For now, Sharon warned. What if he changes his mind? What if he decides he doesn't want to help us anymore after we move to New York? We'll be stranded in a big, expensive city, not knowing anyone. Her mother's concern was legitimate, and Amara felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She wasn't just deciding for herself, but for her entire family. I'll ask for guarantees in writing, she said, determined. A contract that protects our rights. Sharon was silent for a few moments. Do you really trust this man, honey? Amara thought of Alexander, of how he cared for Benjamin with genuine love despite his inexperience, of how he had respected her boundaries and opinions throughout the week, treating her not as just any teenager, but as an equal. Yes, Mom, I do. Then, Sharon took a deep breath, let's try. For your education, for your future, I'm willing to take the risk. But with a contract like you said. After ending the call, Amara sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of the decision she had just made. Her life was about to change radically. The next day, during breakfast, she communicated her decision to Alexander. We accept your proposal with some conditions. Alexander, who was feeding Benjamin some fruit puree, looked up, surprised and hopeful. What conditions? A formal contract, establishing the terms of the agreement, duration of the funding, scope of what's included, guarantees that we won't be left stranded if you change your mind. Alexander nodded, impressed by the young woman's maturity and prudence. Perfectly reasonable. I'll have my lawyer draft a contract that protects your interests. You can have it reviewed by an independent lawyer, whom I will also pay for. And one more thing, Amara added. I want to work. Not just study. I want to contribute to your company in some way. Apply my knowledge. I wouldn't feel right just receiving without giving anything in return. A slow smile formed on Alexander's face. I have the perfect department for you. Our research and development division is working on optimization algorithms for supply chains. With your mathematical mind, I'm sure you'll make valuable contributions even on a part-time basis. Thank you, Amara said, her voice thick with emotion, for believing in me. I'm not just believing, I'm investing, Alexander corrected gently. And I foresee an extraordinary return on this investment. That afternoon was dedicated to preparations for the new phase that was about to begin. Alexander made countless calls, activating his network of contacts to find the ideal apartment, the perfect school, and to finalize the legal details of the agreement. Amara, for her part, alternated between studying for the awards ceremony and making lists of what would need to be arranged for the move. Between tasks, she cared for Benjamin, who seemed to sense the atmosphere of anticipation and was in a particularly good mood. He likes you, Alexander commented, watching how the baby responded positively to every interaction with Amara. The feeling is mutual, she smiled, tickling the little one's belly. He's an extraordinary baby. The evening arrived quickly, bringing with it the Olympiad's closing ceremony. Alexander insisted on attending, bringing Benjamin and William. In the large auditorium at Columbia, he sat among proud parents and dedicated teachers, feeling strangely a part of this academic environment he didn't normally frequent. The ceremony progressed with speeches and acknowledgements, until finally, the moment of the awards arrived. Alexander felt his heart race when the announcer reached Amara's category, and the gold medal in the senior youth category goes to Amara Jones from Charleston, South Carolina. The auditorium erupted in applause. Alexander stood up, clapping enthusiastically, as Amara walked up to the stage, visibly emotional. As she received the gold medal, she sought out Alexander in the crowd and smiled, a radiant smile of gratitude and shared joy. In that moment, something definitive shifted in the businessman's heart. The feeling was unlike anything he had ever experienced, not the ecstasy of closing a billion-dollar deal, nor the adrenaline of a successful hostile takeover. It was something deeper, more significant, the genuine pride of having contributed, however minimally, to the success of someone who deserved it. After the ceremony, they went to dinner at one of New York's most exclusive restaurants to celebrate. During dinner, Alexander made a call to his pilot. Change of plans. We're not going back to Seattle tomorrow. We're going to Charleston first. He looked at Amara, who was playing with Benjamin. We have a family to pick up. 2 days later, the Gulfstream G650 landed at the airport in Charleston. Alexander had insisted on personally meeting Amara's family and helping with the move. The meeting between Alexander and Sharon was initially tense. The middle-aged woman, her face marked by years of hard work, watched with suspicion the elegant businessman who promised to transform their lives. Mr. Sterling, I appreciate your generosity, but I need to understand exactly what you expect from my daughter, Sharon said directly, as they served coffee in the small, simple house in Northbridge Heights. Alexander admired her frankness. Mrs. Jones, I expect nothing more than what Amara already is, an extraordinarily talented young woman who deserves the best opportunities. If she chooses to repay this through contributions to my company in the future, it will be her choice, not an obligation. And why would you do this? Why help strangers? Alexander looked at Benjamin, who was playing happily with Jenna, Amara's younger sister. Because your daughter helped my son when I couldn't, because she saw solutions that no one else did, and because I believe that talents like hers shouldn't be wasted for lack of resources. Sharon studied the businessman's face, looking for signs of dishonesty. She found only sincerity. Very well, she said finally. We will accept your help, Mr. Sterling, but know that I will work and contribute to our livelihood. We are not people who accept charity. I never thought otherwise, Mum, Alexander replied with newfound respect. Now he understood where Amara's strength of character came from. The visit to the community was revealing for Alexander. As he helped pack the family's few belongings, he observed how beloved Amara was by her neighbors. Children constantly appeared to say goodbye, many of them recounting how she had helped them with their math homework. Elderly people came to bless the prodigy girl of the neighborhood, as they affectionately called her. You made a difference here, Alexander commented, as they loaded the last boxes into the vehicle that would take them to the airport. I tried. Amara looked at her community with a mixture of nostalgia and hope. But I can do so much more with the right tools, and you will have them, Alexander promised. At the end of that day, when the private jet took off from Charleston bound for New York, it carried not just physical luggage, but a whole cargo of dreams, fears, and expectations. Sharon looked out the window, holding Jenna in her lap, still uncertain about the journey that was beginning. Amara alternated between explaining to Benjamin, who seemed fascinated by her voice, how a plane's engines worked, and jotting down notes in her notebook about ideas for future projects. Alexander watched it all with a strange sense of fulfillment. For the first time in many years, he felt he was doing something truly significant, something that transcended balance sheets, acquisitions, and the endless accumulation of material wealth. What none of them could foresee was how that decision, made under such unusual circumstances, would transform not only Amara's destiny, but also Alexander's own worldview, the future of his company, and the lives of countless other people who would be touched by the extraordinary mind that now, finally, had the opportunity to fully blossom. Chapter 5: New World, New Challenges. The first rays of sun penetrated the large windows of the apartment on the Upper West Side, one of New York's most exclusive neighborhoods. Amara watched the city awaken, a cup of hot chocolate in her hands. 6 months had passed since the move to the city, and there were still moments when the reality of her new life felt like a dream. The 4-bedroom apartment, with its elegant yet cozy decor, was incomparably different from the 2-room shack where they had lived in Northbridge Heights. Her mother, Sharon, now worked as a patient services supervisor at one of the hospitals in the Sterling Group, earning a salary she had never imagined possible. Jenna, her 6-year-old sister, attended one of the best private schools in the city and was thriving academically. As for Amara, her life had been completely transformed. Enrolled at the Dalton School, one of the country's most prestigious educational institutions, she had access to educational resources she could only have dreamed of before. Additionally, 3 times a week, she worked part-time in the research and development department of the Sterling Group, applying her mathematical knowledge to real-world projects. The phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Alexander. "Good morning, Amara. All set for today?" "Good morning, Alexander. Yes, I'm prepared. A little nervous, I confess." "That's natural. But I have complete faith in you. The board will be impressed with your presentation." Amara took a deep breath. That day, she would present her first major project to the Sterling Group's board of directors, a route optimization algorithm for the company's pharmaceutical distribution network, which promised to reduce operational costs by 27% and delivery times by 35%. "I hope so. It's a lot of responsibility." "A responsibility you are more than prepared to handle." Alexander's voice conveyed genuine confidence. "By the way, Benjamin asked for you last night." "I think he misses you." Amara smiled. Despite her intense routine, she made a point of visiting Alexander and Benjamin regularly. The baby, now almost a year old, had developed a special bond with her, and his little eyes always lit up when he saw her. "I miss him too. Maybe we can have dinner together this weekend. I want to show him the new educational app I'm developing." "It would be a pleasure. Now focus on your presentation. I'll see you in 2 hours." After hanging up, Amara returned to her room to get ready. She opened the closet, now filled with clothes appropriate for her new life, and carefully chose an outfit that conveyed professionalism, without looking like she was trying to appear older than her, now 15 years. As she combed her curly hair, now well cared for with proper products, she reflected on how her appearance had changed along with her circumstances. It wasn't just the better quality clothes or the salon haircut. It was her posture, her confidence, the healthy glow in her eyes that came from well-rested nights and a balanced diet. The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of the driver who would take her to the Sterling Group headquarters. Before leaving, Amara stopped by her mother's room to say goodbye. "Good luck with the presentation, my dear." Sharon hugged her tightly. "Your father would have been so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom." Amara returned the hug, feeling the familiar lump in her throat that always appeared when they mentioned her father, who had passed away when she was only 7. The drive to the imposing building on Wall Street was silent. Amara mentally reviewed each slide of her presentation, every number, every projection. Although Alexander had complete confidence in her, she knew that many of the executives and board members still viewed her with skepticism. After all, she was just a teenager in a world dominated by experienced professionals from the world's top universities. Upon arriving on the 32nd floor, where the boardroom was located, she was greeted by Helen Vance, the Sterling Group's executive vice president. Tall, elegant, and with a permanently serious expression, Helen had been one of the most difficult people to convince of Amara's value to the company. "Good morning, Amara." Her tone was cool but polite. "The board is almost assembled. You will have exactly 20 minutes for your presentation, followed by 10 minutes for questions. Be objective and direct." "Yes, Ms. Vance, thank you for the guidance." Before Helen could say anything more, Alexander appeared in the hallway. Impeccably dressed in a custom Italian suit, he exuded the aura of power and confidence that made him such an imposing figure in the business world. "Amara." His face lit up upon seeing her, a stark contrast to the neutral expression he maintained for most people. "Ready to impress our board members?" "I hope so, Alexander." "Don't hope." "No?" He winked, a gesture of complicity that did not go unnoticed by Helen, whose lips tightened into a thin line of disapproval. The boardroom was intimidating. A noble wood table in an oval shape, surrounded by leather chairs, occupied the center of the room. On the walls, portraits of former group presidents silently observed the attendees. Large windows offered a panoramic view of New York, reminding everyone of the privileges and responsibilities that came with power. The 12 board members, mostly men over 60, watched with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism as Amara entered alongside Alexander. Only 2 women were part of the group, a renowned economist and an heiress from one of the country's most traditional families. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alexander began, taking his seat at the head of the table, "today we have a special presentation. As you know, 6 months ago we began an experimental project in our R&D department, led by an exceptionally talented young mathematician. The preliminary results have exceeded all expectations, and I believe we are looking at an innovation that will significantly transform our logistics operations." He gestured to Amara, who connected her laptop to the projector. Without further ado, I present to you Amara Jones and her integrated logistics optimization system. Amara took a deep breath and began, "Good morning, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to present the project I've been working on for the past few months." Her voice, initially shaky, gained firmness as she moved through the slides, explaining with clarity and precision the complex algorithms and mathematical models she had developed. She used simple analogies to illustrate complicated concepts, making them accessible even to the board members less familiar with advanced technology. As the presentation progressed, Amara noticed a subtle shift in the room. The initial skepticism was giving way to genuine interest. Board members who minutes before were discreetly checking their phones were now leaning forward, completely engaged. With the implementation of this system, she concluded, showing the final slide with financial projections, "We estimate an annual saving of $42 million in our pharmaceutical division alone, in addition to significant improvements in delivery times, especially for essential medicines in remote areas of the country." A momentary silence followed the end of her presentation. Alexander was the first to applaud, soon followed by the other board members, all except Helen, who maintained an impenetrable expression. Impressive. Miss Jones, the oldest of the board members, a man of nearly 80 known for his skepticism, was the first to speak. "I rarely see presentations so well structured, even from executives with decades of experience." The questions that followed were technical and challenging, but Amara was prepared. She answered confidently, without hesitation, demonstrating not only theoretical mastery, but also a practical understanding of the company's operations. Finally, as the question period was about to end, Helen raised her hand. "Miss Jones, your presentation is certainly admirable from a technical standpoint. However, I have a fundamental concern. Implementing a system developed by," she hesitated briefly, "by someone with your limited life and professional experience represents a considerable risk to operations that affect millions of patients. What would you say to reassure this board on this matter?" The question, clearly formulated to destabilize her, hung in the air like a charged cloud. Amara felt all eyes on her, waiting for a sign of weakness or insecurity. Instead, she smiled serenely. "Ms. Vance, your concern is valid and demonstrates the commitment everyone here has to the operational excellence of the Sterling Group. That is precisely why I have proposed a gradual and monitored implementation of the system, starting with a specific region where we can meticulously evaluate the results before expanding to national operations. Furthermore, the system has multiple layers of security and redundancy, developed under the supervision of the senior IT team." She paused briefly before continuing, "As for my limited life experience, I humbly acknowledge that reality. That is why I actively sought the knowledge and guidance of experienced professionals throughout the entire process. Mathematics, fortunately, does not discriminate based on age. A correct equation is correct, regardless of who formulates it." A murmur of approval rippled through the room. Alexander couldn't contain a small smile of pride. Helen nodded stiffly, not showing whether the answer had satisfied her or not. "Well," Alexander concluded, standing up, "I believe we have much to consider. I thank you all for your presence and especially Miss Jones for her exceptional presentation. We will make a decision on the project's implementation at the next regular board meeting in 2 weeks." As the board members left, many made a point of personally congratulating Amara, expressing admiration for her work. Helen, on the other hand, left quickly without another word. "You were extraordinary," Alexander approached as they were left alone in the room. "Your response to Helen was masterful." "Thank you." Amara began to pack her things. "But she has a valid point. I am very young and inexperienced in many respects. Age is just a number, Amara. What matters is capability, and you have consistently demonstrated that." When they left the meeting room, they found Helen waiting in the hallway. Her face was serious, but there was something different in her expression. "Miss Jones," she said in a softer tone than usual, "I would like to invite you to lunch next week. I have some ideas on how we can further refine your system before implementation." Amara blinked, surprised by the change in attitude. "It would be a pleasure." "Miss Vance." Helen nodded and walked away with firm steps down the corridor. "That's unexpected," Amara commented. Alexander smiled. Not really. Helen is tough but fair. She recognizes talent when she sees it. She just doesn't like to admit when she's wrong. This is her way of extending an olive branch. That day marked a turning point in Amara's acceptance within the Sterling Group. In the months that followed, her integrated logistics optimization system was implemented first in New York and then expanded throughout the Northeast, with results that surpassed even the most optimistic projections. However, not everything was rosy in her new life. At school, she faced different but equally difficult challenges. The Dalton School, with its tradition of academic excellence, was also known for its highly competitive and, in some cases, elitist environment. "Look, there's Sterling's little pet project," Amara often heard in the hallways, especially from a group led by Isabella Montgomery, the daughter of a famous banker, and used to being the best at everything. They say she used to live in the projects, and that Sterling adopted her after she did some kind of service for him. I can only imagine what kind of service. The malicious comments hurt, but Amara had learned early in life not to show weakness. Instead of directly confronting the provocations, she focused on proving her worth through her academic achievements. In just one semester, she had already earned the highest grades in math, physics, and chemistry, breaking the institution's historical records. Her teachers, initially skeptical about her mid-year transfer, now considered her one of their most brilliant students. Professor Miles, the strict advanced mathematics teacher, even commented during a class, "If all of you applied half the dedication of Miss Jones, we would have a class of geniuses." The comment, though well-intentioned, only intensified the hostility from some classmates. After class, while packing her things, Amara was approached by Isabella and her group. "So, Jones," Isabella's tone was falsely sweet. "What's it like? Being the teacher's pet? Must be easy when you don't have to worry about anything but studying since your godfather pays all your bills." Amara calmly closed her backpack before replying, "You know, Isabella, you're right about one thing. I have the privilege of being able to focus on my studies now, and I'm extremely grateful for that. But before, I studied while taking care of my little sister and helping my mom survive. So yes, I value every minute I can dedicate to learning." Isabella, momentarily disarmed by the honest response, quickly recovered. "What a moving story. But we all know you're only here because Sterling felt sorry for you, or maybe he has other interests in such a talented girl." Amara's blood boiled. She could tolerate insults directed at her, but insinuations about Alexander's integrity, who had been nothing but respectful and genuinely concerned with her development, were unacceptable. "You're mistaken, Isabella. I'm here because I deserve to be, because I worked hard, and because I have something to offer. And Mr. Sterling is a man of character, who recognizes potential where others only see social labels. Perhaps that's a difficult concept to understand for someone who has never had to prove their worth." "You little project rat, Isabella." The firm voice of the literature teacher, who had just entered the room, interrupted what would undoubtedly have been a grave insult. "I need to speak with you about your term paper." The group dispersed, casting hostile glares at Amara, who remained impassive until she was alone. Only then did she allow a few tears to escape, quickly wiping them away before heading out into the hall. That night, alone in her room, Amara questioned whether she truly belonged in this new world. Despite all the opportunities and Alexander's support, there were moments when the distance between her origins and her current life seemed insurmountable. Her cell phone buzzed, interrupting her melancholy thoughts. It was a message from Alexander. "Benjamin took his first steps today. I wish you were here to see it. He was saying something that sounded a lot like Amma while he was trying to walk. Dinner together tomorrow." Attached was a video of little Benjamin, now almost a year old, taking wobbly steps while Alexander encouraged him from off-camera. Amara smiled through her tears. That simple message was a reminder of what truly mattered, the genuine human connections she had formed, the positive impact she was beginning to have, and the infinite possibilities her future now offered. She replied simply, "Wouldn't miss it for the world. Congratulations to our little champion." Putting her phone away, Amara looked out the window again at the illuminated city. The challenges were real and sometimes painful, but for the first time in her life, the future was an open horizon of possibilities, not a sentence predetermined by her social status. And that, she concluded, was worth every tear, every obstacle, every moment of doubt. Chapter 6. Ascent and Revelations. The event hall at the Glass House in New York was decorated with discreet elegance for Amara's 18th birthday celebration. The soft lights, arrangements of tropical flowers, and the panoramic view of the city created a sophisticated yet welcoming atmosphere. Alexander had insisted on organizing the party, despite the birthday girl's initial protests that she preferred something simpler. "You don't turn 18 every day," he had argued. "Besides, it's an opportunity to celebrate not just your coming of age, but all your achievements over these past 4 years." And achievements were plentiful. Amara had graduated from the Yale Dalton School as valedictorian, with the highest grades ever recorded in the institution's centuries-long history. She had been accepted simultaneously at Harvard, MIT, Stanford, and Oxford, as well as every American university she had applied to. She had chosen, to the surprise of many, to remain in the US, simultaneously pursuing degrees in applied mathematics at Columbia and computer science at MIT, through a special program for exceptional talents. Professionally, the integrated logistics optimization system she had developed at 15 had been expanded to all Sterling Group operations in the US and was being implemented in international branches, generating estimated savings of hundreds of millions annually. Furthermore, Amara now led a research and development team focused on technological solutions for social problems, a department created specifically for her by Alexander. "You look beautiful," Sharon commented, helping her daughter with the delicate pearl necklace she had received as a gift from Alexander. The navy blue dress, elegant without being ostentatious, highlighted her natural beauty and newly acquired maturity. "Thanks, Mum." Amara smiled at their reflection in the mirror. "It still feels like a dream sometimes." "You deserve every achievement, my daughter." Sharon's eyes shone with pride. "Your father would be so proud of you." "I think he's watching from somewhere." Amara hugged her mother, who now worked as the administrative director of the Northbridge Institute, a non-profit founded by Amara, with Alexander's support to bring tech education to underserved communities, starting with Northbridge Heights in Charleston. A light knock on the door interrupted the moment. It was Jenna, now 10, dressed in a graceful pink dress. "Amara, the guests are arriving and Alexander is asking for you." "We're coming, sweetie." Amara smiled at her sister, who had transformed into a bright and cheerful child, flourishing with the educational opportunities that would have been unimaginable for her before. As they entered the hall, Amara was immediately surrounded by friends, colleagues, and professors. Her extraordinary journey had won her admirers even among those who had initially rejected her. Isabella Montgomery, who had surprisingly become a close friend after a school project forced them to work together, was one of the first to embrace her. "Happy birthday, genius." Isabella, now an international relations student, handed her a small gift. "Sorry for all those years of being a brat. I was an unbearable teenager." "We were all teenagers trying to find our place," Amara smiled, generous as always. In the center of the hall, chatting animatedly with some executives, was Alexander. At 42, he remained extraordinarily attractive, with a few silver strands at his temples that only added to his air of sophistication. Upon seeing Amara, his face lit up with a genuine smile. "There she is," he announced, approaching to hug her. "The most brilliant birthday girl this country has ever produced." "An exaggeration as always, Alexander," she smiled, returning the hug. In the 4 years that had passed, their relationship had evolved into a deep friendship and an intellectual partnership that transcended differences in age and origin. The mutual respect was evident to anyone who observed them interacting. "Where's Benjamin?" Amara asked, searching for the boy in the crowd. "He's coming with Helen." They had a slight delay at his swimming lesson. As if summoned by the mention of his name, a little boy of about 5 years old ran across the hall, his dark hair still damp. "Amma!" Benjamin shouted, throwing himself into her arms without any ceremony. "Happy birthday, I made you a drawing." "My little man." Amara lifted him up, covering his face with kisses. "This is the best gift I could ever receive." The bond between Amara and Benjamin had strengthened over the years. For the boy, she was a constant, loving presence, a mix of older sister and the maternal figure that Eliza, his biological mother, had never been. After the financial agreement made years before, Eliza had never again tried to make contact, apparently. Satisfied with the arrangement that guaranteed her a luxurious life abroad, the party proceeded magnificently. During dinner, Alexander stood up for a toast, silencing the elegant crowd. "4 years ago," he began, his voice laden with restrained emotion, "an unexpected storm forced my private jet to make an alternate landing. At the time, I considered it an annoying inconvenience, an obstacle to my perfectly organized plans." He paused, his eyes meeting Amara's. "Today I know it was the most fortuitous moment of my life. That unexpected detour led me to meet Amara Jones, a young woman who would transform not only my company and my son's life, but also my own worldview." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. "In 4 years," Alexander continued, "I have witnessed an extraordinary talent blossom, not just in mathematics or technology, but in humanity, in the ability to see beyond equations, to find solutions that benefit real people. The optimization system that Amara developed not only saved our company millions, but ensured that essential medicines reached remote communities faster. Her tech training program has already graduated over 2,000 young people from low-income backgrounds, many of whom now work in our company and other tech corporations." Alexander raised his glass. "Today, as we celebrate her 18th birthday, I want to officially announce that the Board of Directors of the Sterling Group has unanimously approved her appointment as Director of Social and Technological Innovation, with a permanent seat on the board. Furthermore," he paused dramatically, pulling an envelope from the inner pocket of his jacket, "I have the honor of informing you that you are now officially a shareholder of the company, with a 5% stake in the total shares, in recognition of your extraordinary contributions to the group's growth and evolution." A gasp of surprise swept through the hall. 5% of the Sterling Group represented a fortune estimated in the billions of dollars. Amara was momentarily speechless, her eyes welling up. When she finally managed to stand, her voice was thick with emotion. I don't know what to say." She took a deep breath, regaining her composure. "When I got on that plane 4 years ago, I was just a girl trying to get to a math competition with a patched-up backpack and dreams bigger than the possibilities life seemed to offer." Her gaze swept across the hall, meeting her mother's emotional face, Jenna's radiant smile, Benjamin's proud expression. "If I am here today, it is not just because of my talent or effort, but because someone believed I deserved a chance." Alexander not only offered me resources, but also respect and an intellectual partnership that challenged me to grow continuously. Therefore, I accept this responsibility not as a gift, but as a commitment to continue contributing so that others may also receive the opportunities that transformed my life. The applause was enthusiastic. Helen Vance, who had initially been the most skeptical of Amara's potential, was one of the first to rise in a standing ovation. Over the years, the executive had become an important mentor to the young woman, complementing Alexander's support with a female perspective on the challenges of leadership in a predominantly male environment. After the formal speeches, the celebration continued with music and dancing. At one point, Amara discreetly stepped out onto the terrace, needing a few moments of quiet to process everything that had happened. "May I join you?" It was Alexander, holding 2 glasses of non-alcoholic champagne, respecting the fact that Amara didn't drink. "Of course," she smiled, accepting the glass. "Thank you for everything, Alexander. The party, the announcement, but most of all for these 4 years of unconditional support. I'm the one who should be thanking you." He leaned against the balustrade, contemplating the illuminated city. "You transformed the Sterling Group from a company focused only on profit to an organization with a purpose. And more importantly, you transformed Benjamin and me." A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind of silence that only exists between people who know each other deeply. "I have another gift for you." Alexander said finally, taking a small box from his pocket. Something more personal. Amara carefully opened the box, revealing a delicate white gold brooch in the shape of a constellation. It's the constellation Cassiopeia, Alexander explained. In mythology, she was known for her extraordinary intelligence. It reminded me of you. It's beautiful. Amara carefully pinned it to her dress. I will cherish it forever. There's something else I need to tell you. Alexander's tone shifted, becoming more serious. Something I've been putting off for some time, but that you deserve to know, especially now that you've come of age. Amara looked at him, intrigued by the sudden change in atmosphere. What is it? Is something wrong? Alexander took a deep breath as if gathering courage. When we met on that flight 4 years ago, I told you I was returning from an important business merger. Yes, I remember. You had just added a few more billion to your fortune. She smiled, remembering her own naivety at the time. The truth is, I wasn't returning from just any merger. Alexander paused, choosing his words carefully. I had just finalized the acquisition of Jones Advanced Technologies. The name hit Amara like a physical blow. Jones, her last name. What? But that doesn't make sense. My family has never owned any company, let alone a tech industry. Not your immediate family, no. Alexander looked at her intensely. But your great-uncle, Augustus Jones, founded the company in the 1980s, a pioneer in microprocessors in the United States. Amara tried to process the information, her mathematical brain searching for logical connections. I've never heard of this great-uncle. He cut ties with your family long before you were born. There were old disputes. When he passed away with no direct heirs, the company went through difficulties and was eventually put up for sale. And you bought it. It wasn't a question, but a statement. Yes, and during the acquisition process, I had access to the company's historical files. Alexander hesitated again, including records about Augustus Jones's distant descendants, who might have had some kind of legal claim, however remote. Amara's eyes widened with sudden understanding. You already knew who I was when we met on the plane. Alexander nodded slowly. Your name was in the records as a direct descendant of Anthony Jones, Augustus's brother. There was even a record of your exceptional performance in regional math competitions, filed by Augustus, who apparently discreetly followed the talents of the family he had broken with. Amara took a step back, her mind processing the implications. So, our meeting wasn't by chance? You deliberately sought me out? No. The vehemence in Alexander's voice was undeniable. The meeting was completely accidental. I knew of the existence of a young prodigy named Amara Jones, but I could never have imagined that I would find you on that flight under those circumstances. It was one of those moments that defy all statistical probabilities. She studied him carefully, years of living together, allowing her to discern the truth in his words. Why didn't you tell me before? Alexander ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of nervousness. At first, because it was irrelevant. I helped you because you deserved to be helped, not because of your last name. Later, because I feared you might misinterpret my intentions, think there was some kind of manipulation or hidden interest. And finally, because I simply never found the right moment. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unasked questions and complex emotions. There's one more thing. Alexander pulled another envelope from his pocket, larger than the first. The shares I gave you today are not just recognition for your current work. They are in part a restitution of what by right of blood perhaps should have been yours. Amara accepted the envelope with slightly trembling hands. What is this? Toitadi, the complete documentation on the history of Jones Industries, including genealogical records and Augustus's private correspondence. He left a letter for any descendants of Anthony who manifested the same talent for numbers that characterized the Joneses for generations. Technically, this letter is yours by right. Amara looked at the sealed envelope, feeling its literal and metaphorical weight. Does this change anything? Between us? Alexander looked at her, his expression open and vulnerable in a rare way. Only if you let it. To me, you are still the same extraordinary Amara I met on that plane, the young woman who calmed my son when no one else could, who saw beyond appearances and showed me a world of possibilities that I with all my billions had not envisioned. She processed the information in silence, her face revealing the internal battle between surprise, confusion, and finally acceptance. I need time to digest all of this, to understand what it means for me, for my family. All the time you need, Alexander nodded respectfully. Before they could continue their conversation, Benjamin came running onto the terrace. Dad! Thelma, Grandma Sharon is looking for you. It's time to cut the cake. The moment of revelation gave way to the reality of the ongoing celebration. As they followed the excited Benjamin back into the hall, Amara felt the weight of the envelope in her hands, filled with a past she didn't know, and that could alter her understanding of her own identity and journey. In the hall, everyone was waiting. Sharon, Jenna, Helen, executives, professors, friends, people who had been part of her extraordinary journey over the last 4 years. In the center, an elegant cake with 18 lit candles symbolizing the transition to a new phase of life. As everyone sang happy birthday, Amara looked at the envelope in her hands and then at Alexander, who was watching her with a mixture of apprehension and affection. Whatever the contents of those pages, one thing was certain: her story was far from over. In fact, a new chapter was just beginning. She closed her eyes and blew out the candles, making a silent wish that the truth, whatever it was, would only strengthen the bonds she had built and the opportunities to make a difference that now lay before her. Chapter 7. Beyond the Algorithms. The morning light flooded the spacious office on the 32nd floor of Sterling Tower, in the financial heart of New York. Amara sat before the panoramic window, contemplating the skyline of the city that had become her home. 2 years had passed since her 18th birthday party, since the revelation that could have changed everything or nothing. The envelope Alexander had given her that night had remained sealed for almost a month. Amara had needed that time to process the idea that her family history was more complex than she had ever imagined, that perhaps her exceptional talent for mathematics was not a statistical anomaly, but a genetic legacy. When she finally gathered the courage to open the envelope, she discovered not only corporate and genealogical documents, but personal letters, old photographs, and handwritten notes from Augustus Jones, the great-uncle she had never known, but whose blood ran in her veins. The letters revealed a story of sibling rivalry, both brilliant but with diametrically opposed views on how to use their talents. While Augustus had chosen the corporate path, accumulating wealth and power, Anthony, Amara's grandfather, had opted for academia, becoming a university professor and dedicating himself to pure research. The break occurred when Augustus tried to commercialize patents developed by Anthony, believing his brother was wasting his potential on research with no immediate commercial application. That discovery brought a new dimension to Amara's understanding of herself. It wasn't just chance that had led her to balance a brilliant mathematical mind with a deep social concern. It was also the convergence of 2 lineages of the same blood, reconciled in a single person. The soft sound of the door opening interrupted her reflections. It was Helen Vance, now CEO of the Sterling Group. "Good morning, Amara. Ready for the board presentation?" asked Helen, elegant as always in her impeccable suit, but with a genuine smile that would have been unthinkable a few years earlier. Almost. Amara gestured to the 3-dimensional holograms floating around her desk, displaying complex graphs, equations, and simulation models, just making the final adjustments. Nervous, Helen approached, observing the displayed data with interest. Amara smiled calm. "Not at all. This project is solid. The numbers don't lie." The numbers in question referred to the most ambitious project Amara had ever developed, an artificial intelligence educational platform that adapted the teaching of mathematics and sciences to the specific needs of each student. Initially conceived to benefit children in underserved communities, the platform had evolved into a complete ecosystem that was already being implemented in public schools across the U.S. with extraordinary preliminary results. "Has Alexander arrived from D.C.?" Amara asked, closing some of the holograms with precise gestures in the air. "Yes, the jet landed an hour ago. He's at home changing. The meetings with the department were productive from what he told me." In recent years, the relationship between Amara and Alexander had evolved into something hard to define. More than mentor and protege, more than friends, less than family. A unique intellectual and emotional partnership based on deep mutual respect and genuine affection. Now, at 20, Amara was a confident, brilliant woman, respected in the corporate and academic worlds, is still simultaneously pursuing her 2 degrees while developing revolutionary projects. "How's Benjamin?" she asked, as she always did. Helen smiled. "Excited about the idea of watching your presentation. For a 7-year-old, he has a surprising interest in educational technology. He's a special kid." The affection in Amara's voice was evident. Helen's phone rang, interrupting the conversation. "The board is assembled. Shall we?" In the large meeting room, the atmosphere was one of anticipation. The Sterling Group's board of directors had changed significantly in recent years. Younger, more diverse faces had gradually replaced the traditional middle-aged executives. Alexander, at 44, had stepped down from the executive presidency, assuming the chairmanship of the board, a position that allowed him strategic oversight while delegating daily operations to Helen. When Amara entered, everyone stood in a gesture of respect that she still found slightly uncomfortable. Her chair, next to Alexander's, symbolized her unique position in the company. Not just an exceptionally talented young director, but a visionary whose influence had redefined the conglomerate's mission. Alexander arrived moments later, accompanied by Benjamin, who immediately ran to hug Amara. "Ama, I brought you a present." He held out a small 3D printed object, a representation of an artificial neuron. "I made it on the printer at the school lab. It's a neuron from your artificial intelligence." "It's perfect, Ben." Amara hugged him, genuinely touched. "I'll put it on my desk." The meeting began formally, with Helen presenting the agenda and the group's quarterly results. When it was time for Amara's presentation, all eyes turned to her with genuine interest. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," she began, activating the room's advanced holographic system. 2 years ago, I began developing an adaptive educational platform based on artificial intelligence, initially aimed at underserved communities. The project, which we named Flourish, has evolved beyond our most optimistic expectations. 3-dimensional images filled the room, showing children interacting with the platform in schools across the country. Preliminary results show an average increase of 47% in math performance and 38% in science, in the 200 schools where the system has been implemented. More importantly, we've observed a significant reduction in dropout rates and a marked increase in interest in scientific and technological careers, especially among girls. Detailed graphs and statistics appeared, supporting her claims with solid data. "Today, I bring to the board not just a progress report, but a proposal for expansion." She paused, her eyes briefly meeting Alexander's. "I propose that the Sterling Group make Flourish an open-source platform, available for free to public education systems worldwide." A murmur of surprise ran through the room. Even with the company's more social reorientation in recent years, a proposal to give away such valuable technology for free was unexpected. "Naturally," Amara continued, unperturbed, "we will maintain premium versions with advanced features for the private sector, ensuring a sustainable business model. But the core of the platform, what truly makes a difference in the lives of children without access to quality education, will be free." She went on to detail the financial model, demonstrating with precise numbers that, paradoxically, opening the code could increase long-term profitability by creating an ecosystem where the Sterling Group would become the global standard in educational technology. When she concluded, there was a moment of contemplative silence. It was not just a business proposal. It was a statement of principles, a redefinition of what a corporation could be in the 21st century. Alexander was the first to speak. "I believe I speak for everyone when I say that your vision is not only inspiring but fundamentally transformative." His gaze swept across the table. "Does anyone have any objections or questions?" To Amara's surprise, there was no significant resistance. Technical and financial questions were raised, but the central principle, that knowledge should be accessible to all, was not contested. In less than an hour, the proposal was approved unanimously. After the meeting, as the board members dispersed, Alexander approached Amara, who was chatting animatedly with Benjamin about how the platform would help kids like him learn in a more fun way. "You continue to surprise me," Alexander commented. a proud smile lighting up his face. "When I met you, I thought I was helping a young prodigy develop her potential. I didn't imagine she would be redefining the purpose of my own company." "I owe it all to you, Alexander." Amara looked at him with sincerity. "Without that initial opportunity—" "No," he interrupted her gently. "You would have found your way regardless. Perhaps more slowly with more obstacles, but your talent and determination are too extraordinary to be contained by circumstances." Benjamin tugged on Amara's hand. "Ama, are you having dinner at our house tonight? Maria made that chocolate cake you love." "Wouldn't miss it for the world, little man," she smiled, affectionately ruffling the boy's hair. "Great," exclaimed Benjamin. "I'll call Grandma Sharon and Jenna too. We can all play that math game later." As Benjamin ran to Helen's office to use the phone, Alexander and Amara walked to the large window that dominated the room, watching New York at dusk. "I spoke with the Department of Education today," Alexander broke the silence. "They are extremely interested in Flourish. They want to implement it nationally by the end of next year." "That's incredible." Amara's eyes shone with enthusiasm. "That means we could reach over 35 million students in the US alone. And with the open source model you proposed, potentially hundreds of millions globally." Alexander observed her with a thoughtful expression. "You know what this means for your legacy, don't you?" Amara frowned slightly. "I don't think in terms of legacy, Alexander. I think in terms of real impact of transformed lives. That's exactly why your legacy will be extraordinary," he smiled. "Augustus Jones built a fortune. Anthony Jones built knowledge. You are building a better world." The mention of her ancestors, whose stories Amara had deeply absorbed in recent years, made her reflect. "Sometimes I think about how strange the path that brought us here is. Her baby crying on a plane, an unexpected storm. What mathematicians would call an unlikely convergence of independent variables," Alexander completed with a smile. "Or what my mom would call fate." Amara smiled back. "Speaking of your mom, how is the Northbridge Institute?" Amara's face lit up. The Northbridge Social Institute, the non-profit she had founded with part of her resources to bring tech education to underserved communities. Starting with her home neighborhood in Charleston, had expanded to dozens of units across the country. Amazing. We just graduated our 1,000th programming class. 75% of the students are already employed in the tech sector, many at the Sterling Group itself. Alexander nodded, pleased. "And is your mother enjoying her new role as a speaker?" Amara laughed, remembering Sharon's extraordinary transformation, from a shy housekeeper to a powerful motivational speaker who shared her life experience with thousands of women in vulnerable situations. She was born for it. She has a natural gift for connecting with people, for inspiring them to believe in themselves. Like her daughter, Alexander commented with a meaningful look. Before Amara could respond, Benjamin came running back. "Grandma Sharon and Jenna are coming. And Helen too. It's going to be the best game night ever." Amara and Alexander exchanged amused glances. The family they had formed, unconventional, not defined by blood ties or traditional roles, was a reflection of the extraordinary journey they had shared. A few hours later, in Alexander's spacious Park Avenue penthouse, dinner had turned into a lively competition of mathematical games. Sharon, now a confident woman in her 40s, discussed strategies with Helen. Jenna, at 12, already showed the same extraordinary talent as her older sister, calculating probabilities with impressive ease. Benjamin, determined not to be left behind, struggled with intense concentration, his tongue sticking out of the corner of his mouth as he worked on the calculations. Observing the scene, Amara felt a wave of deep gratitude. Her life had been transformed in ways she could never have imagined on that distant morning when she had boarded an economy flight to New York, carrying only a patched-up backpack and dreams bigger than her possibilities. Alexander approached, offering her a glass of grape juice, his traditional alternative to wine at celebrations. "A toast?" he suggested. "To what?" He thought for a moment. "To improbable encounters, to the storms that divert us to unexpected paths, to the children who cry on airplanes." Amara smiled, touched by the reference to the moment that had changed everything, and to the babies who are now brilliant boys, she completed, looking fondly at Benjamin. to the mothers who never give up, to the businessmen who discover there's more to life than accumulating fortunes, to the extraordinary talents that flourish when given opportunities. Alexander raised his glass a little higher. And to the future we are building together. They toasted in silence, words becoming unnecessary between two people who had shared such a profound journey. In the center of the room, Benjamin celebrated loudly, having finally solved a particularly challenging problem, while Jenna patiently explained the solution to Helen. "Mom? Amma, come see," the boy called, proud of his achievement. "We're coming, champ," Amara replied, exchanging one last meaningful look with Alexander before joining the rest of the group. At that moment, looking at the unlikely family they had formed, a billionaire who had learned the value of investing in people, not just companies. An executive who had discovered that efficiency and compassion were not mutually exclusive. A former housekeeper who now inspired thousands. Two sisters whose extraordinary intelligence was changing the world. And a boy growing up surrounded by love and examples of integrity. Amara knew for sure that her story was much more than a tale of social mobility or material success. It was a narrative about how small acts of empathy can trigger profound transformations, about how talent, when nurtured with opportunities and solid values, can transcend seemingly insurmountable barriers, about how sometimes it takes a child crying on a plane to remind adults that in the end, what really matters cannot be measured in billions or algorithms, but in the ability to make a difference in each other's lives. And as she joined the others at the game table, Amara was certain that of all the mathematical problems she had ever solved in her extraordinary life, none was as beautiful, complex, and rewarding as the equation of human affection, that unpredictable variable that transforms destinies, defies probabilities, and reminds us that even in the rarefied heights of success, it is the warmth of human connections that truly sustains us. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Amara and Alexander has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking to the left of the video. If you enjoyed this narrative of overcoming and transformation, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave a like. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the complexity of human life and the miracles that happen when we open our hearts to the unexpected. Share in the comments if a chance encounter has ever completely changed the course of your life. We look forward to reading your own stories of transformation